Well, I'm very pleased to be interviewing Sherrill Main, who's Senior Vice President, Industry Service for the IAB. Thank you so much for your time, Sherrill.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, let's start with your background. How did you get to where you are today?
I like to make jokes about how it was by accident, but I think there was some deliberate planning involved along the way. I always viewed research as a necessary, valuable skill that could be parlayed into other things, and I believe I have succeeded in building on that foundation. So, whether accidentally or on purpose, the truth is everything I do is somehow infused with a mindset that comes from having been trained academically to be a researcher and having worked with data. It is the data and the work that you do that infuses how you do strategy, how you think things through systematically, how you measure your performance, how you evaluate the performance of those you lead. It is systematic, logical thinking that also is a big part of the digital business. And so I believe that I have used those skills along the way. And now for the new world of digital, we have a number of challenges that clearly lean upon my background in research. What I can say is the work I'm doing today at the IAB is far broader than that. And we are literally working with our members, and it sounds kind of kumbaya-ish, but the truth is we have people who have full-time day jobs in a competitive world who work tirelessly in the IAB councils and committees under the leadership of folks who are on my staff, and in some cases my own personal leadership, to literally build a business. They look at what the technology does, they look at how it works, they look at what it means for consumers and for advertisers and for agencies, and they are creating standards, guidelines, and business processes to make it possible for an advertiser to invest in all manner of digital media. So I'm really, really proud of that work, and I'm really proud of the community of members that we have and the work that they do with me and with my staff.
And I think your background includes some very illustrious television companies. Can you elaborate?
Certainly, certainly. I worked at Group W. It was a Westinghouse broadcasting company, and back then it was one of the leaders in cable television, and we had some wonderful folks there. And then after that I worked at Nielsen Home Video Index, and I was on Susan Whiting's staff, and Susan at the time was running that division, and she is just a magnificent leader, and it was such a great pleasure to work for her. And I learned a lot about cable, which I had already known to some degree from working at Group W, because it was a cable network company as well. It was actually the Nashville network, and I did sales support for it, and I also worked in the consumer and audience marketing research role, because that was my background. Actually, I learned ratings research and media planning along the way, but I walked into the industry, as I mentioned earlier, with academic training, so I knew how to write survey questionnaires, I knew how to design studies, I even knew the basics of sampling theory. I was not a statistician, nor do I purport to be one today, and I struggled mightily in graduate school reading Kish and some of the other major thinkers on sampling theory. So I knew the basics, and I knew what questions to ask and how to go to a statistician to get it done correctly. And at Group W I did that role, and I also did sales support using very rudimentary Nielsen data by comparison with what exists today. And as I said earlier, I then went on, worked for Susan Whiting. It was a wonderful experience. Some of my most esteemed colleagues to this very day are people I met and worked with and for as our clients when I was at Nielsen. And I got to do some really fun things. Nielsen used to publish TV Audience. It was an annual compendium of new studies and new insights, and because of the background I already had, I got to play and I got to use Nielsen data that were in some cases rather Byzantine to extract, but you could really come up with interesting ways of looking at television and how it's used. So I did work on multi-set homes, and I did work on what I called at the time grazing, which was really a lot of the very early work on how different demographics were racing through the dial or not racing through the dial, and in which genres of programming, and fascinating understanding that's actually quite valuable today, given that today the screen's the thing in all manner of digital video.
And I think just before the IAB you worked for Turner.
Yes, for a very long time, and some of the best years of my career happened at CNN, and I had the great privilege and pleasure of working for people like Joe Yuva and Larry Goodman and Rick Servaitis and Greg Dalba, and some truly tremendous thinkers, giants of the media business, people who really at the time built a business and are continuing to build it, people who understood, I mean, this is where the connection to today's life is truly strong. CNN.com was one of the first really heavily trafficked websites, and people like Larry Goodman and a number of other people at CNN Sales and at Turner Broadcasting had the vision to say, we have to monetize this. One of the things I learned about media selling that I think should be remembered on a daily basis by lots and lots of folks who are out there selling both traditional and digital media, you don't have to give stuff away. New media, emerging platforms, they're not added value. They are valuable media for which there has to be a fair price. And that's something that everyone who comes out of Turner really understands. The beauty of what I did there also was I had not only wonderful bosses with really, really keen minds who understood the media business, but huge amounts of resources, data, great people. It truly was a good experience, and it helped me transition away from line research. It was a real career growth because I started working on all of our upfront presentations. I was the first person in CNN Sales to get trade marketing budgets and really begin a huge, by those standards at the time, trade marketing effort that had lots of elements of outreach, trade ads, collaterals, participation in all manner of advertorial placements.